Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel, Homoeopathy Super Sessions by Dr. Jargos. Today I'll be doing Ortega's book, Note on Miasms, a brief summary from chapters 12 to 15. Well, chapter 12, that's the part 2 of the book. It deals with the application of the doctrine of miasm to the human affinities and social relations. In this chapter, we must know what to observe. Practical examples are given, and combination of relationships of affinity, overlap or continuity among cases of predominant sora, 1 mark, psychotic 2, and syphilitic 3. So, out here, many case examples have been given, and for the soric miasm, it denotes 1, psychotic denotes 2, and syphilitic denotes 3. Well, in this chapter, importance given to what is formulated in theory must be matched with the doctrine of miasm. So whatever theory has been formulated, that has to be matched with the doctrine of the miasms. Each and every principle of homeopathy has to be implemented in our practice if we want to be crowned with success. So whatever principles are there in homeopathy, each of these principles has to have its practical utility if we want to be successful in our practice. Thus, the mere search for a similar medicine does not itself constitute homeopathy. So, by only finding out the synonym, that does not constitute homeopathy. For the principles which perceive and succeed this in their total interaction require application of the two logos and the constituting the science. So, in order to find out the correct synonym, whatever principles are there, which are there before and after, that is required, or in the application of the science. In the same way, we cannot regard homeopathy merely as administration of the small dose, as it's sometimes suggested by the silly statement that the dose in homeopathy meaning very small. So also again, it's a misnomer by saying that the dose in homeopathy is very small. Why? Because our doses are highly dynamized and highly potent. So therefore, you cannot say that the dose is very small. For a procedure to be truly homeopathic medically, it must involve each and every one of the principles which underline the method. So if you want to properly or truly practice homeopathy, you have to involve each and every principle and see which principle is correct and which is wrong. So basically, all the principles, all the cardinal principles are correct in homeopathy. So it would be wrong to say that to see which principle is wrong. So all the principles are correct. We have to verify them in our practice. Likewise, if homeopathy does not indeed represent an aspect of truth, it must be of a universal application. Homeopathy will have its application in the details of human relations. So also homeopathy will have its application as how a human being mingles up or relates with the family, his friends, in society, and so on. The miasmatic realm, which are linked to those who correspond to us, and this correspondence will also be a function of the miasmatic characteristics. So each and every one of us has its own miasmatic characteristics, and they have to match with the characteristics of the other persons. Examples are given on page 115 to 120, which you can read if you are interested. 13th chapter, it deals with the definition of symptoms. In the chapter, the following points are discussed: the scope of symptom, analysis of symptom from the miasmatic viewpoint, and analysis of the most frequent or most meaningful mental symptoms. The subtle differences produced by different modulations of the miasm. So the symptoms are there, and each symptom has its own miasm, or each symptom has its own subtle difference. The form in which the investigation of symptom is realized, and confusion in the definition of a symptom leads to error in the therapeutic indication. So any confusion or any misnomer regarding the difference of a symptom will lead to a mistake in the therapeutic indication of the drug. One of the greatest difficulties encountered by the newcomer to homeopathic clinics is about the symptomatology in the patient as well as the pathogenesis making up the materia medica. So when a person is new to homeopathy or is just passed out, it becomes confusing for him to exactly perceive the symptomatology as well as the pathogenesis of the materia medica or the symptoms of the materia medica. Let us look at what is most necessary for practice, what is indispensable for correct definition and classification of symptoms. The physician must seek all possible minute of details in the investigation of such common symptoms, as for example, vomiting. So whatever symptom is there, though it be common or characteristic, he must go into the details of it. So an example of vomiting is given in the book. We must determine precisely if it is sudden, upon awakening in the morning, upon standing up, during meal, etc. So different modalities have been given regarding the symptom, common symptom of vomiting. In the same way, we must investigate all the symptoms, both common and particular. But first and foremost, everything relating to the general symptom. So he said, no doubt, we must investigate all the symptoms, common and particular, but the most important is the general symptoms. Examples of chills are given with indication of different homeopathic remedies, page 123 to 124. So chills are given, and which homeopathic remedies will cover that chill is also given. Now we must also search for the mental symptoms. So besides the physical general symptoms or the common particular symptoms, we must see also the mental symptoms. The psychological state of the patient has to perceive loathing for life, desires, death, etc. We will also consider suicidal dispositions like by jumping out a window, by poisoning, by hanging, cutting one's vein, etc. And let us analyze the predominant miasmic tint of these symptoms. So the different psychological symptoms have to be taken into consideration, like loathing for life, suicidal dispositions, and we have to analyze them in depth. We perceive the reddish tint of syphilis, since that is the maximum expression of destructiveness, contempt for life. So in syphilis, there is destruction, there is degeneration, there is contempt for life, so it has a reddish tint. But the color of the first symptom analyzed, weariness of life, although purplish, has a considerable amount of blue, meaning that much of sora, a veil glance into that from the relative serenity of sora, or better still from the soric sluggishness. So initially, you may get a symptom which starts on the soric plane and then goes on to the syphilitic plane, or from the blue plane to the red plane. We now take a symptom which is more associated with fear, with psychosis, that is fear. The emotion of fear gives it the characteristic yellow of psychosis. So whatever fear is there, that is psychosis. So Ortega has related psychosis to the yellow. Another variety of fear is to take fright, to be startled. This condition also to be psychotic, but with some soric tint. If sora dominates, fear not only attains its full extent, but also remains as anxiety. There are so many other predominantly soric symptoms such as timidity, want of self-confidence, helplessness, etc. Ire, rage, fury, sadness, grief, prostration of mind are also mentioned with the counterparts in the repertory. Also, frivolity, libertinism, and want of moral feeling are discussed. Foolish behavior, childish behavior, morose, propensity to frown, and many others have also been discussed. Chapter 14, the miasmic classification of the medicine in function of their symptoms. In this chapter, the following points will be discussed. Lycopodium, the trimiasmatic, calcarea carb as predominant homeosoric, pulsatile and thuja as preeminent homeopsychotic, mercury, the cactus homeosyphilitic, and the various triangles symbolizing medicines with the representation of the miasmic series of symptoms which they produce. So let us take the example of lycopodium. Lycopodium has its tri-miasmatic activity. That is, it has all the miasms, sora, syphilis, and psychosis. It can be analyzed by the symptoms given in Kent's repertory and placing them in 3 columns corresponding logic to sora, the first, psychosis, the second, and syphilis, the third. So if you open the repertory and if you have 3 columns, first column is sora, second is psychosis, third is syphilis, and you write down the symptoms, you will get the triasmatic activity of the medicine lycopodium. Although we must warn, as we have already stated, that some symptoms will have to be put in between the columns because of the ambiguity of their origin. So if you're not sure of the origin, then some symptoms have to be put in between these columns. You can refer the page 150 to 151 to 152. The whole table is given in the book. So if you observe painstakingly the pathogenesis of this great remedy, you will verify that its symptomatology is rather precise remedy for a dominant psoriatic condition as well as for psychosis and syphilis. So you can see from this table that all the three miasms are dominant. If we weigh carefully as though on a scale, the pathogenic manifestation of the medicine in accordance with the miasmic characteristic of the deficiency, excess and perversion, we find equivalent number of manifestations each of these three great diagnoses. So we are getting equal number of symptoms of the psoriatic, psychotic, and the syphilitic medicine and the syphilitic miasm of the deficiency, excess, and perversion. Let us take calcarea cough as an example. It represents homeopathic remedy. In all of its symptoms, we can see the blue traces of inhibition, deficiency, lack. Psora is predominant. So in most of the symptoms, you will see the traces of the blue taint, that is inhibition, deficiency, or lack. So Psora is predominant. In calcarea, there is apprehension in the highest degree from the time he wakes up until the time he goes to sleep with respect to the health. So out here, there is great anxiety about the patient's health right from the time he gets up till the time he goes to sleep. This also is another prominent psoriatic trait. Let us try to understand the mechanics of these symptoms. If we transform the patterns into figures, such as for calcarea, 80% psora, 13% syphilitic, and barely 7% will be psychosis. Let us take the example of pulsatilla. It is a genuine homeopsychotic remedy among the many polychries. Its characteristic erratic pains, its abundant discharges or suppressions, giving rise to condylomatas, and its great aggravation during change of weather or change of the period of the day. So all these symptoms will indicate the psychotic trait. We also mentioned Thuja occidentalis, both because Hahnemann regarded it as possessing the characteristic qualities of a homeopsychotic, and also because Kent, the greatest of masters, makes specific reference to the other medicines. Many psychotic symptoms of Thuja are described, like the perspiration is peculiar, it is sweet in odor and smell like honey, sometimes like garlic, strong and pungent, waxy shining face. It looks as if it has been smeared over with grease and is often transparent. So here you can see all these features are homeopsychotic in nature. Kent immediately clarifies that these psychotic patients often have a peculiar asthmatic condition which seem to indicate arsenic, a profound medicine for chronic states. But that in these psychotic patients, arsenic serves only as acute remedy, but Thuja is the chronic remedy. So in a case where Thuja is the chronic remedy, patient is asthmatic, then arsenic will be useful only for the acute remedy. Many symptoms of Thuja have been described in the length from pages 158 to 162. Next example is of mercuris. It's a great homeosyphilitic, which obviously includes syphilis in the first place, then psora, and finally something of psychosis. It has characteristics of the third miasm: destruction, involution, perversion, spasm, ulceration, and mortification. Mental symptoms are described in length, page 162, and other symptoms are described in length, pages 163 to 166. Chapter 15, the miasms and eugenetics. Application of miasm doctrine to prenatal prophylaxis and genetics. Prophylaxis is the great preoccupation of all physicians and biologists to prevent suffering, to try to avoid it as so not to encounter it and suffer its consequences is an absolutely appropriate desire of the human. So let us see what the chapter contains. Our doctrine of miasms, with its great content of truth, would not be alien to eugenetic inasmuch as we claim for the universal general application. So eugenetics is nothing but the way whereby a species or human beings can, what can be done for a species or for the betterment of the human being. We find eugenetics intimately linked to Hahnemann's miasmatic doctrine. To cure a person does not mean only to free him from his present suffering or elevate his suffering, but also to preserve him and spare him from the future suffering. From the biological and the medical viewpoint, the individual becomes the generic man. So if we see the person from the biological as well as the medical viewpoint, we have to see what are the generic or what are the hereditary features present within them. When our analysis is complete, or at least it has been carried as far as possible, we then pass to synthesis, and in medicine, this means to general pathology. So when our analysis is complete of the symptoms, then we go to the synthesis, and then we go to the pathology. Eugenetics is the branch of biology which furnishes us the knowledge which genetic man needs to continue or persist to remain a species on Earth and develop in the best possible way, the meaning, the truest realization of the whole potential and tendencies as a species. So eugenetics basically it deals with the branch of biology, and it deals how to improve the species or the health of the mankind. Let us give a thought to which characteristics are peculiar to man. It cannot be the fact of being alive or only of having vital activity, since characteristics are also seen in other beings and even in plants. So the fact of being alive, having vital activity are not only seen in the human being, but also seen in the plants. It cannot be the capacity to move from one place to another, since animals possess the same ability in many instances, even surpassing humans. So also the capacity to move from one place to another, animal possess the best capacity, even it will overtake the humans. Some qualities which seem to pertain exclusively to the human genius. So there are some qualities which only will be seen in the human beings. At least the humans have a greater capacity to perform certain operations or discernment of affection and fondness, of ordering in an objective series, of reasoning, of memory, of passion, of kindness, wickedness, of various forms of collective life, of modifying his appearance, of manifesting his desires for persistence and in art. So all these qualities are there which are not seen in the other genius. To choose and discern between one thing and the other, these qualities are possessed by the normal man. So discrimination, what is right, what is wrong, that is only possessed by man. The animals do not possess it. The epigenetic formula should not be restricted to chromosomal factors or the mutation possibilities of such scientifically defined anatomical elements as genes. Even though they are convenient labels, the genetic formula should be referred to and reduced from dynamic elements, the spiritual, the psychical, sensorial, violation, and also from the environmental, caloric, and radiation. So besides the genetic formula, we also have to see the dynamic proposal or the dynamic elements like the psychical element, the spiritual element, the sensorial element, and so on, even the environmental ones. Examples: a psoriatic patient, when facing an immediate danger, is paralyzed by inhibition. If it's a fire in a public building, he will at first be overwhelmed and will start to reason about what to do, but always as if it was difficult to force his body to action. So he's given an example of a psoriatic patient, how he will react when he's in a building which catches fire. So he will be anxious. He will try to find out what to do, but he will not be able to make the proper use of his action. He will seek a promising place of refuge. That means what he will try to hide himself, or he'll find a safe place whereby he can stay. Will give thought to the possibility of finding an exit. Will trust that someone will come to his aid. Will call for help, and at least last resort, will decide to obey his impulse. So this is his reaction toward the fire. The psychotic, on the other hand, will start seeking an exit at the first cry of fire. Well, the psychotic patient will immediately try to find out an exit, not like the psoriatic patient who go on thinking. His sudden fear will cast him headlong through the flames or out of the window if there's any possibility of rescue. So, because of this fear, he will try to jump out of the window, and probably someone will come and rescue him. He will forget everything, even his wife at his side. But if it has a moment of reflection, he will seize his child and belongings and endeavor to rescue them also. He may perish in an attempt out of hastiness, but he will certainly act with promptness. The syphilitic will quickly fall into a state of panicky terror. So the syphilitic patient is there will be a panicky terror. His red-tinted mind will simulate his aggressiveness and make him desperate in the face of the impending danger. So he may become aggressive, he may become desperate in the face of impending danger. If he has a loved one with him, he may immolate this person and then kill himself, or seize him and jump out the window to a certain death. So that's all. The next chapter 16 to 18 will be coming up soon. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.